Okay, welcome to part 2 of our interview with Mr. Tom Bleecker and Mr. Chuck Sullivan, two Kenpo old-timers, good-timers, first-generation students. I'm here with my buddy Zach. We're going to do part 2 and part 1. We had Ben Taki with these two gentlemen, and now we have Chuck and Tom. We're here at the Blood, Sweat, and Cinema podcast. That's rock and roll, gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to hear.
So let's back up a little bit and let's take it from, you're in the Pasadena studio and Ed Parker's offered teaching it back. He says, there's a gentleman coming in who was Brucey. Take us through that.
Okay, well, when we were walking out from the dressing room with our shoes and jackets or whatever, and he walked on the mat with Bruce, and he said, "I want you guys to meet." It was Danny and Dave Hebler, myself, possibly one other person. I can't really remember. I know it's at least the three of us. And they said, "This is a hot young martial artist, Bruce Lee." It's the exact points. And we all shook hands, and then Ed was called on the phone or something. And Bruce Lee immediately took over the conversation. He started telling us about being in Hong Kong recently. And we said, Hong Kong, wow, the mecca of Kung Fu. So what are things like in Hong Kong? And he said, well, I first said, well, it's a 95% commercial bullshit. And we all went, what? Did you just say it's 95% commercial bullshit? He says, yeah, that's what I said. And we're like, okay, well, that doesn't leave much. Well, what about those other guys? Well, he says, half are trying, but they don't know what they're doing. Okay, now these are very small, 2.5%. Now these are very, very small percent. What about those guys? Oh, those guys, he says, you wouldn't even get down the alley when they work out because it's, I barely made it being Chinese. But he said, no, you guys, you get murdered before you get down there. And we talked for a while, and then he said, oh, by the way, I was watching what you were doing earlier. And he showed us a symbol booth. I'll give you an example. It was like short hour block. And he said, why were you doing that? Why were we doing that? Because that book, I was teaching it. Oh, I just wondered because it was Wong. I saw Dave Edward grow 3 inches and he looked at me and kind of like, you want or should I take it? He just insulted our instructor. And I'm like, Dave, let's see what he has to say first. Then we could get upset. And so it was like, go ahead, tell us what's wrong about it. Well, he showed her what's wrong about it. He showed her what's wrong about it. There's no strength in it at all. It's a terrible block. You're blocking with the radio reverse. It should not be in the system at all. But it's still there today because it's part of a form. And they can't leave that form out because it's traditional. I have always felt that when tradition gets in the way of common sense, it's gotta go. Because it makes no sense. If you do that block, you're gonna get it's the simple as that. All you gotta do is turn it that way. Now you can hang on it. But this way, no, a 10-year-old could pull it down. So that was now I'm driving home 20 minutes later, and I'm thinking to myself, how could this punk shit you have in there? He was 21 at the time. I was 31. So 10 years at that point in your life, any point in your life, really, it's a dull learning experience. So, and I'm wondering, how come you could do that? How come you can't do that? Well, I never tried. That was it. When I say, you idiot, you never tried. So from that time on, Bruce taught me a great lesson. Don't just take somebody's word for it, because when I started, Ed Parker knew everything about karate, and I knew nothing. So I was absorbing everything he said, and some of it was, some of it was reality thought out, and he didn't think it out. He just took it because it was taught to him. And that's how you start teaching, the way your instructor taught you. I couldn't do that. And when I started teaching, I threw out a lot of things. I instituted a lot of things.
Now, that was your first meeting with Bruce. Tom, take us
Yeah.
through your first meeting with Bruce. I want to add to that what Chuck said. I wonder what he would say about the martial arts in China.
because Hong Kong was entirely different from China. The Hong Kong was run by the British. And I wonder if the real Chinese in China was probably a lot different than what they had in Hong Kong. And Bruce was not full Chinese.
Well, just to not to interrupt, but I've asked some people about that, and you're not. It's a good question. It's a whole conversation by itself. Right. For example, my sifu Raymond Wong, Kwang Zhong Wong, he teaches Dalgar, which is basically a disappearing system of kung fu. Tai Nantis and Mai-Zhong Lo. Mai-Zhong Lohorn is a northern Chinese martial. He learned it in China. So a lot of the people, the instructors, sifus in Hong Kong, actually came in from China. So to reflect on what you're saying, I think a lot of what you were getting in Hong Kong was just as good as what you get in China. Maybe they had a different interpretation, maybe a different mentality in the sense, because as you like said, Hong Kong's a Western city at that point. But even to this day, Raymond Wong, when he teaches as though he learned it in China and in Hong Kong. And so I think whether it would be lost or different, maybe depends on the instructor. But also, when I've been to Hong Kong and I talked to a lot of sifus there, they've kept it as traditional as they could, but like they've made certain changes, like you said, it become a digital. Yeah, well, yeah, but it is commercialized, and you've been there in Hong Kong, but they've kept it more like when it's commercialized in the Western world. Sometimes the Nard is watered down to the point that it's a dance. And in Hong Kong, in my experience, with Hungar, Mai-Zhong Lohorn, Alexander Thies, who's another the Yik Yu King disciple, they didn't water it down. It's not so much about the money. Yeah, you have to get paid, but not so much. So now go back to what you're saying when you first encountered Bruce.
I was going to ask a real quick question. You were really open to what Bruce had said. You know, it took you maybe a second to kind of dive into that, but you were more open immediately, right?
Right.
Was everybody more open to it because Mr. Parker had brought in that? Or were there other people who are like,
Screw this 21-year-old Chinese guy. I don't know what else do. I told you the story about when Danny and Asando brought the old Chinese mastering and how
Yeah, well, let's tell it to the audience. It's an interesting story. I can show you the difference. I was in class and I had showered and I was on my way out. And actually, just to back up a little bit, it's here in West LA. See, West LA. Okay, we call it Santa Monica, right?
And I was going to a party or something. I must have been 16 or 17, almost 17 years old. And I'm on my way out, and Danny had come in with a short kind of Chinese fellow. And as I walk into the viewing room, they were standing there. And I'm on my way out. I said, "Hey, Dan." And he said, "Hey, I want you to meet somebody." And he introduces me to the Chinese fellow. And I look at him, and he said something garbled. I couldn't understand it. I looked at him, and he had kind of that, kind of like the guy in the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. You remember the you got kind of like that guy upstairs, brown face. So I looked at Danny. I said, "Where do you find these guys anywhere?"
as a joke. And anyway, I said, "Listen, I'm on my nice meeting you." I slapped him on the back. I slapped Dan on the back. I left. I came in about a few days later. I came in and Danny was teaching a class out on the med. He saw me and he comes running over to me. He said, Tom, I said, what's wrong with him? He said, Tom, you cannot talk to people like this. So what are you talking about? He said, do you have any idea who that guy is that I came in, who that his master that I came in with the other? I said, no, I have no idea who he was. He said, well, he gave me this big thing. I said, yeah, so what? He said, you can't talk. But that was it. It's kind of like what you were talking about. As far as I was concerned, Ed Parker was it. Everybody else was like secondary. Shouldn't matter. Ed Parker was the man. And he also drummed that into us. We were learning the best martial art. There was none better, including Shotokan or Jerry Fan, any of them. We were the best. So anybody that he could have brought in there, I'm not going to do a whole, but Bruce was different. So to back up a little bit, yeah, who was the Chinese guy to? I have no idea. Oh, it wasn't Bruce Lee. No, it wasn't Bruce. It was some other guy, and I'm sure he was very. I mean, if he came in with Danny, he must have been quite a man. Was he an early? You know anything about him? I don't know who he was. I didn't ask. So to give that story context, what year was that in the whole rank? Were you running the Santa Monica? Oh, I don't know. I was the most senior in the Santa Monica school because I came over from La Cienega. But it would have been 63. So 63, and there's probably a 4-tip, 2 or 3, 4, maybe a 3 or 4 tipper, maybe.
So when did you first encounter Bruce?
Well, I was probably in late 63, probably, because I was still in high school. And Bruce came in with James Lee, and Ed Parker was there.
To the Santa Monica school.
To the Santa Monica school, and I don't remember if I was in my D or what it was, but I was there. And I watched them, and one of the first things I noticed was that Ed Parker truly respected Bruce. He had his full attention on Bruce, and Bruce had his full attention on Ed Parker. And that was the first time I'd seen that. But when Bruce moved, that was a whole different deal. I was standing right there, and when he would shoot a back fist or a kick or anything else, you could tell how the speed that he had. His first time, I thought Ed Park was the fastest thing I'd ever seen, and Bruce Lee was as fast.
Now, when did you first see Bruce Lee demonstrate anything that left an impression on? Was it in the Santa Monica school? Was it somewhere? Do you recall that experience?
Well, I certainly was impressed by his demonstration at the 64 Internationals. That was very impressive. But prior to that, I was going down into his house. I befriended him for a number of reasons. We just got along very well from the beginning, probably for a number of reasons. But I used to go down to his house, and then I got him an apartment at the Barrington Plaza at some point. So I was in 66 or 67. We just became friends. But I was very impressed with him from the get-go. The thing that he did with me, that may have been what happened, I wasn't at Pasadena, but the thing that he did with me that impressed me the same way that he was talking to you was with the inward block. We like the 5 count. They have all the 5 swords now, but the 5 count, the inward block, we crossed the center line to him. The center line that runs toe heel, it's through the center. When you take your arm and cross that center line, it to him is a fatal error. And he would cave your front arm, and no matter how hard you tried to get it back, you couldn't. The minute you started that, he would collapse your front arm and come right over the top and smash him. The back fist would come and hit you. And I kept trying. He said, you cannot cross, because now you had 3 weapons of the 4 on that side of the line and 1 on that side. It's a fatal error.
Well, he's coming from the Wing Chun point of view, which is control the center line.
Control the center line and the immovable elbow and all that. He is very effective with that.
Now, when he said you got 3 weapons on one side, meaning your hand crossed the center line, it's now on your left side, your left hand already left leg.
That's right.
What was his alternative? Did you ever have that? It was, if the line's here, you have to pick it up with this hand and strike with this hand. So this hand never crossed, and it never crossed either way. If you have something coming here, you're going to the outside, pick it up with this hand and shoot rather than this hand, because then and the 5 count is here, and the first shot you have is a hand sword to the neck. It comes here and then there. He would do the block and this, and then of course later on, we learned this at Kenpo too, you don't block anything. It's like boxing. You don't block anything at boxing. And I guess you absorb it maybe. Yes, it'll be a deflect and all that, but the more skilled you become in Kenpo, you don't block anymore. Those blocks are really used the strength that thing is.
So that just to back up a bit, Tom, what was your first experience watching Bruce do something physical, other than the outer block or whatever it was he did at Pasadena that night? What was your? I mean, and that was very impressive, but that obviously had a lasting effect on things you did and how you saw things moving forward and how you did things moving forward. Yeah, but when was the first time you saw him really demonstrate what he went, wow, it was 64 International. Yeah, and you were right there, right? You're at the end,
That all did he do at the 64 and also? I know he did the 1-inch punch. He did some sparring. How did he do the white? That was at 57. He did. So maybe I'm good.
Was it like, oh, he said, he did the 2-finger push-ups at the 64 internationals. He did that wrist lock, and he went into a cross twist stance, and he roundhouse kicked the guy in the head. It was really fast. It was in an all-black outfit. He did hit a series of kicks, which are very neatly done, where you kick, spin around, kick, and land on the kicking leg, and then throw on the...
Well, that same thing he threw during that little audition. The Hollywood area. Yeah, same day.
Yes. No, it was even more impressive what he did in 64.
So 67 though, he actually sparred. I remember they had the helmet on.
Yes.
They had their say that was.
Yep.
I think he did something with Taki at 64, didn't he? Wasn't Taki with him? Taki Kimura, wasn't he with him in the 64? Was it
I believe it's him that he did that lock-up. The wrist lock. He's demonstrating again that the whole footage is not up there. There's pieces of footage, and it's very grainy. But I think it was, I have to go back and re-look, but I think he did have Taki Kimura with him, yes.
He did, yes. You know, there's an interesting...
He certainly had Taki and Danny. And he had Wong at 67.
Yeah, because I remember seeing Dan in the
67 for sure, yeah.
And there was an interesting thing about the kicks, because right before he did the kicks, he went on this thing about how in what he does, he never kicks above the waist.
That's what I was going to ask.
He says it's all in Wing Chun, and they only kick from the lowest way below the waist. Well, the guy that was sitting next to me leaned into me. I guess there were people there that didn't like Bruce. They thought he was arrogant, and he offended some people.
I'm sure
He really did. But the guy next to me said, "No, that's because he can't kick above." And I thought, well,
when he did those kicks, and so all that for kicks above the
right before that, he was saying they don't kick above the waist. And the guy said to me, that's because he can't do it. And that's what Bruce put the microphone down. He said, but if I have to. And that's what he had flinging those. Sorry, he grabbed it in the air, head to the head and everything else. That shut that guy up.
You know, it's wild to hear that, because I'm piecing some dates in my mind, because I remember watching an interview with Chuck Norris, and they did Way of the Dragon in 68.
They did Way of the Dragon in 72.
Oh, 72, 76, I think 70, 73. Yeah, because the 69-ish was Chinese Connection. And
No. The big boss was 71. So I guess the Fury was late 71, early 70.
was it the 7s?
When the it was so good with dates, man. Way of the Dragon was the summer of 72, and then he went to shoot Game of Death. And there's 73 in snow. It was 72 shot in September through August through October 72. And then in the meantime, Fred Weintraub flew to Hong Kong and then at OCAD, which became Enter the Dragon, was actually initially Gordon Steele. So he abandoned shooting at Game of Death to start retraining on tape with steroids for Enter the Dragon. And they started to shot Enter the Dragon from January through March 73. Went into editing April through May. He collapses. He comes here, has a whole medical test done at UCLA, and they tell me at the body of an 18-year-old. And he visits Bob Ball and Chuck Norris, and while he was very thin, he was still very strong. Flies back to Hong Kong, resumes work on Enter the Dragon and whatever had to be done post-production, and dies July 20th, 3 weeks before Enter the Dragon was scheduled for release at the Chinese Theater.
I'm going to come back to that for sure, yeah. But I want to ask this, because I remember watching Chuck Norris did an interview, and I don't know when the date was. It may be in the 80s, could have been even the 90s. And he had said in this interview, well, Bruce never wanted to kick above the waist. It wasn't until he saw me kicking and having, some success at kicking in the head that he decided to adapt those kicks. But what you're saying here is just that he was already doing it.
Well, he could. It's possible in Wing Chun. He did say we do not kick because it's much easier to use the hand. I think probably what Chuck was saying, he could, because he certainly would have known.
Yeah.
He could, but he didn't because he preferred to kick low. I think that's probably...
So you think Chuck had kind of shown him that it is worth doing?
No, I think my sense is that Bruce saw that what was realistic about it would help him a lot in film
too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If he would have said, I can't, I'm definitely going to be doing these high kicks for film. So
he would have been. But I've seen people that say, well, they taught him how to kick and all. That's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have given him pointers. I know when people would come up to Roscommere or down Roscommere mainly, because Bruce wasn't teaching in Chinatown. Danny was doing the teaching there. But when they came up to Roscommere, they were exchanging all these ideas constantly. So I'm sure there were people that gave him pointers.
Yeah.
They exchanged knowledge.
So to get back to the Kenpo, so Chuck, 61 comes along, you meet Bruce Lee, so on and so forth. So then take us on your journey a little bit, because you started, at what point did you start your own federation? And then at what point did you now open up a school where? And take us through that journey, please.
All right. Well, I guess it was 61 that we opened up the Crenshaw School, Crenshaw Boulevard between Florence and Manchester, and that school was right along just beautifully. There's a lot of read stories about what happened. Some was tough, some was crazy, George. Somewhere.
Would you like to share a few?
Oh, we had a flight to San Francisco.
Who had a fight?
Jay LeRoux was flying the plane. We had a guy by the name of Wayne Stevers.
Hey, let's just back up a little bit. Just before you get to the playing part, who are these gentlemen? Just to give us a breakdown so we know where we're going.
Right. All right. Well, they're all students.
They're all your students.
They're all yours.
In Crenshaw.
Yeah, I'm Crenshaw Boulevard. Yeah. Doc Schultz was a doctor. What kind of a doctor? He was osteopath.
He was he was
Anyhow, osteopath. Yeah, but he had DR was one of his day. And the Wayne Stevers, Crazy George, Steve Sanders, who I saw. So we get in this plane, and there's 6 of us, and it's actually a 4-passenger plane. So Steve and I are in the lightweight, so we're sitting on a shelf meant for luggage. And as we got in the plane, it fell down on its truck. So on the back end. So Jay says to Doc, he says, Doc, would you mind, going out there, picking it up? And Wayne Stevers had a kind of yell, is he picking up this airplane? No, it's only a 2-year tolerant gate. It's a heavy car. So he gets back in, falls down again. Gets back in it, it's did it 3 times. So Jay said, well, as soon as we get the fan view on for the propeller, it'll be flying. Well, sure enough, it's not pulling, not back here. And he says, he's revving it up. And he says, now, leave this part for her to shoot. And that time. So the 2 guys in front are hanging there with them. Steve and I are standing up and going over to see the hanging on the George at the Wayne. And I see the tower going by, and that's the way we took off. Yeah.
Oh, did you land him on his seat or was it?
4.
How many was in it?
6.
How'd you land?
Now, we're flying, and I watch your green lights because they're the case of the airport. It is a revolving green light because if I find another one, so I can yell to Jake, this is an airport. So now all of a sudden, there's no airports. There's nothing but black and foggy. And
Where are you
don't know where to fly. You zip line.
Where are you flying to?
San Francisco.
From
L.A. Yeah, hot car.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're flying along, and that next thing I know, Jay is unfolding a map. And it's black-haired pitch out there. And I said, are we lost? No. The radio screwed up. So you just set the radio to take you well, and it took us out over the ocean. So now we're flying over in the ocean, and pitch black, and Jay behind where we're supposed to be. And on E corrects. And also we got lights on and so on. They say, San Francisco. So now this is the time when the jets were first coming out. And jets had the right of way. And we had a jet on our tail. So we're finding, oh my God, very funny. And anyway, came back around and we landed. And we said, now, everything's good. So we competed.
Now, what was the tournament? Broadcasters. Been back. And this was what year?
66. Well, I came in 65, so And I remember Jay Arruda there. Yeah, so it's probably 66, maybe 65 even.
So it was so long ago we can't remember.
So was it California Karate Championship, Ralph Castro?
Yep. Okay.
Was it the 67 one?
All right.
If was this event? 68? 69.
Take your pick.
Okay, but this was the tournaments.
Yeah. It was
Okay, so he
said it about
California Karate Champion.
race. Oh hell. It was just a tournament of tours for the concern. So we flew up there, and now when we take it off, you could reach up and grab a handful of cloud. I mean, it was the clouds up there were like thick.
This is not when you're flying back down.
Fly back. Yeah.
I remember the fog, you said.
Well, this is yeah. All right. What happened was Jay says we're all complaining about
So now you have trophies and everything, right? So now you have more weight.
just one kind of thing. Yeah.
There's more weight. Who won trophy?
Boy.
Thank you for asking. Because I wanted to listen. Anyway, we now Jay says, "Oh, see that hole up there? We're gonna fly right through that hole and go to LA because it's clear all the way." And we're like, "Yeah, okay." We get to play the whole tour. Now we take off, and we're flying, and you can't see the wings, the lights on the wings. I mean, it's so big. This has a fog. So that we're flying along in this fog, and we're all buffet. And Jay finally says, we're looking at the map. Jay, there's a picture on here, 3,500. We're only at 33. This is nothing. He says, we're over the bay. There are no peaks over the bay. You want to see? We all said, yes. So he drives on and come out over the bay. And you satisfied now? Yeah, look, they flew up and they say, it's clear, and it was clear all the way to LA. No more incidents. And I think we fell asleep.
Now, to back up, that takeoff in LA is like a carry-on movie story. Yeah, those carry-on is like, you're lucky to be alive.
Yeah, I know.
You're laughing at it now, but so you mentioned Steve Sanders. So was he a student of yours?
Yes.
So he started with you.
No, Steve was with the West LA school, and I brought my guys over, and we all fought. And he likes what he saw with our guys and myself. I think, well, that was the one, right? Anyhow, that's special. Chuck Norris, owning Alabama. Anyhow, Steve said, yeah, he was a student of West LA. And after the little get-together we had, he goes up to me and he says, excuse me, where do you guys work out? And I said, Crenshaw Boulevard, between Forest and Manchester. That's my backyard. He's like, can I transfer? And I said, well, Steve, this is the public school system. No, you can't transfer. But when you finish over there, it's still a partner school. So if you want to come over here, yeah, you could come over here then. And he did. And I don't think he went to finish over. He just came over.
Yeah.
And he considers me his instructor, and I consider him my instructor, because I learned as much from Steve Mohammed as he learned from me, easily.
So we just back up a little bit here. We have, well, what is a cover of Ed Carper's first book. I do have the book, but I don't have the book here. But that was the cover, nevertheless. And of course, this was the second cover. Would that be correct? So talk to us, Tom, a little bit. What do you know about this when it was going down? Did you hear about it at the time? Was this earlier? Well, there's talk to us about this.
I may have seen this somewhere. Maybe I saw it on Amazon. This is the book I remember.
I was hard version when I said, yeah, this is not out there. This is not out there.
Well, this is the same book.
Well, the text is, but the cover.
Oh, the cover, yes. That's the original cover, right?
Well, if you look in the inside, well, you had the hard copy.
I do, but I don't have it.
Okay, look and see when it was published. I first saw this book in 1962, and I bought a copy, and I bought a copy of this one. This book is a fourth printing. And we were talking about this earlier. This is a fourth printing. It was in 1989. A fourth printing.
It doesn't give us the first printing, though, when it came out originally?
No, but it's the... Okay, 1960. But also this book, it says the cover designed by Edmund Parker Jr. So Edmund Parker Jr. wasn't born in 62. So this is much later.
This is much later.
And I don't know who did this cover, but it wouldn't have been Edmund.
Right now,
I don't think he was born in 62. Well, he was
no, 60.
This was no, but Edmund wasn't born in 62.
He was and really close though, because when he came down to the west, down to the Santa Monica school behind the Sakurama, I used to carry him on my shoulders and do a horsey thing around the max of the school. And he was probably like 3, 4, maybe. So,
Just, do you have any thoughts on this? When did you first encounter this? Because it was 1960, you would have been 1 year in training, correct?
Yep.
Do you remember when that was going on, being put together? Or would you have any involvement?
This is his second book then. All right. That was his first.
Oh no, this is the same book. This is the original cover. That's the later cover.
you'll see all the pictures are with Rich Montgomery, the same. Yeah, those pictures. I cut all those pictures out of my book. I got another book and put them in a note.
Where were those pictures taken?
Chuck?
Pasadena?
I would certainly think so. Yeah. Yeah, that was his only school at the time. Yeah, this is Rich Montgomery.
I'm just thinking about this. It's like back in the day, publishing a book was a big deal. I mean, it's still a big deal today. But you think about this, imagine fast forward to nowadays. All these would be a YouTube channel. You know what I mean? All these would be a YouTube episode or a production or something along those lines. And it's wild how things have kind of blossomed and what it is,
So talking about a second book, Secrets of Chinese Karate. Now, we know that on some level, and Chuck, you can clarify, you were there, Tom, you too, that I've spoken to some people who say this is essentially a Choi Di Foot book, was written by Jimmy Wing Woo. Parker came in and put his final touches like a two-man form and so on. But to clarify it for the viewers, how did this go down? It's a 1963, so it's a second book. That's very Japanese in its applicated. It's more Chinese and more where Kenpo was going.
It is a Chinese karate. Correct is what it's called.
So talk to us a little bit about virtually cool.
Okay. Ed Parker was already writing the book. He had the idea, the title, the whole thing. And he was well into the book when he met Jimmy Woo in San Francisco. And he invited him, Jimmy Woo addressed him enough to where Ed invited him down to stay at his house and they would work on the book together. Well, in the meantime, he brought him into the dojo and introduced him to his advanced class. And all of a sudden one day, Ed wasn't there, Jimmy was. And Jimmy taught the class. And it come to find out that when Ed Parker would be too busy or couldn't make it or track or whatever, called Jimmy, it wasn't quite that age, we had cell phones at the time. But he would make sure that his Jew would know he was taking over the class. Well, he took over the class. He literally took over the class. And he took everybody from all the brown belts and all the black, and there was 3 black belts and about a dozen brown belts, and he took them all and transplanted them out to Hollywood Boulevard. What I call the crappy end of it. If there's a good end, I don't know, but the aesthesia of it. And he had a school there, and they were all his students, his core students. And of course, when he did that, that devastated Ed Parker. I mean, these guys were like family to him, to Ed. And when they went off with this guy, and I was the only one to stay. I was the only one. I didn't see going with Kimura. I just didn't see it. I thought those guys were crazy.
How did the teachings with Jimmy Woo go down? Take us through that a little bit. Because you would have been used to Ed Parker, who walk in the mat, bow, attention, so meditation.
Yeah, so the Chinese do a whole different thing. Jimmy Woo would actually lay in a corner with an ashtray, smoking, on the mats while we were doing it. Then he would reluctantly get up and show us something, and then simply lay back down. That's how he taught the class.
Was he good at what he did?
Yes, he was good at what he did.
And what did he do?
I thought it was very, very effective and very shallow at the same time.
Explain. What is
Well,
on?
a lot of it was this white. And we got, I took a couple of techniques from here for short and for long. We had 2 techniques in our system from him. But his whole system, in this case, were all
Especially being circular motions.
yeah.
But particularly Chinese martial arts of that kind.
At that time,
And also still today.
and I'll tell you, it was very effective, but very limited at the same time. Because I tried to later on after the Splendor, when the reading class became the advanced class, I tried to again stay him. I did this like that. He waited till I bit his hip to me in the face. So I said, well, stuff will work on the street, but not here. These guys are too savvy.
So you said you took 2 techniques from,
Yeah.
and you implemented them into what became the Chuck Sullivan system. What did you call those 2 techniques?
Fist of Fury and Chinese longhand.
Interesting. 2 interesting names. Now, Tom, did you have any experience with Jimmy Woo? And take us through it if you did. I'm sure you encountered him.
I had a couple of comments about that book.
Okay, so Pierre, take us through it.
The first one is that I believe that the reason that Jimmy Woo was brought down was for his knowledge of the Chinese,
Meaning the history of what Ed Parker was doing or where it came from.
what Ed Parker was seeing in San Francisco. He wanted to incorporate some of that in the writing that he had already done. And he, from being in San Francisco, Chinatown with those elders, he could tell that Jimmy Woo could be helpful.
Now, so did any of that, in your knowledge, come to Ed Parker from Chow? Because we know Chow knew Lao Bun, who was a Hong Sin Chow Yi but instructor and basically controlled San Francisco Chinatown at that time. And we know that Jimmy Wei Mu was a student of Lao Bun. So did you ever, was that connection ever?
I don't know either about.
Okay, so continue. I don't know that.
So I think that Ed Parker, on the other hand, was educated. He had a bachelor's degree from Brigham Young, and he had an excellent command of English. So it was a great marriage. You had a lot of things that Jimmy was contributing, but he couldn't write. Ed Parker had he had the command of English. That was one thing that brought for me. Another thing is this word secrets. You hear about Bruce Lee catching all kinds of trouble from the Chinese about how can you be teaching Caucasians and how could you be doing these things. And the same thing, you would hear that sometimes from Ed Parker. So how can you be teaching? Well, if all that were true, and some come up and could really get in trouble for teaching these ancient movements, where does Ed Parker get away with saying the secrets of Chinese and publishing a book? So obviously it wasn't all that big of a deal, because otherwise he would have never gotten away with this without being stormed by somebody. And the other thing I will say about Jimmy Woo is that I don't recall ever meeting him. I talked with him during the writing of the first Journey book because I had to confirm some things with him. I was in Joe Hyams's, I had his phone in that office of theirs, and he said, well, let me call Jimmy Woo, and I'll put you on the phone with Jimmy Woo. I said, okay. So he put me on the phone with Jimmy Woo, and the minute he heard that I was a first-generation black belt of Ed Parker's, he clammed up. He wouldn't say, we didn't want to talk much until I explained to him what I was doing, and I wanted his help. Then he got very talkative. But at first he thought I was going to say, listen, you son of a, and I didn't do any of that. I was very respectful to him, and I talked to him. And then he was very open. He answered a lot of questions about the Pasadena school and his time there. One thing I will say about Jimmy Woo is I don't have any firsthand knowledge, but I do know that Bob Cook, after he got his black belt from Ed Parker, went to train with Jimmy Woo exclusively and stayed with him for many, many years.
Now let's back up and just give a
brief intro to the audience of who Bob Cook was.
Bob Cook won the 64 white belt internationals, the heavyweight white belt division against one hell of a match against Chris Welks, who was at that time was Chuck Norris's top student in the white belt, who was a great fighter. I later got to know Chris when I was at UCLA, but Bob Cook beat him, and I think there was like 3 overtimes or something. It was a hell of a fight. Bob beat him. And then he was so good that Ed Parker would take him. He's at a tournament with Ed Parker, Inosanto, and Bob Cook. You have the trophies you asked me about. He put a black belt on. Put a black belt on Bob Cook. Had entered him in tournaments, and he was beating black belt. I think this is correct. I believe it is correct that Bob Cook is one of only 4 people who ever beat Mike Stone. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's correct. Well, to beat Mike Stone, you got to be pretty damn good. But Bob Cook was fearless. I mean, this guy, and he later went on to become a very, very competent martial artist. So there must have been something about Jenny Wu for Bob Cook to have gone to Jenny Wu and stayed with him as long as he did, and to be the fighter that he was and the gifted athlete that he was. Jimmy Wu must have had something. And then I remember I was talking to Diane Tanaka one time, who I have great respect for. I mean, she's got a wide knowledge of martial arts. And she told me that Jimmy Wu was extremely talented. Coming from Diane Tanaka, I said, well, I'll take that. That's what I've heard from people who, yeah.
Let me counter to say what you knew.
Yeah, but I had no firsthand. She's had firsthand. I've had no firsthand. I never met it. I've spoke to him on the phone a lot, but I never met him. But I have heard. And the thing about Bob Cook is, you can't underrate that. I mean, for Bob Cook to stay as long as he did with Jimmy Wu, there had to be something about him.
Now, Bavisa, what do you guys ever encounter RQE1? Like, who is the 5 animals? Because I know Ed Parker spent time with him. And you see a lot of different pictures I've viewed of Ed Parker doing poses, even though he's in his Kenpo attire. I've seen Art Wong kind of do the same pose, and we know that could be just coincidence too. But I do know they spent time together, as Parker did visit him in his Chinatown school. And Bob Cook,
Yeah, you know, Sando with the they're in the guard. They're in Art Wong's books.
yeah, as well. So there's an interesting crossover there. Now, I'm looking at something, Zach, you pulled out here. The Zen in Martial Arts. A very interesting little book by Joe Hyams. I know you both knew Joe Hyams. And there's an interesting, this is actually signed by him. There's an interesting crossover between Joe Hyams, starting Silverfant, yourself, Bruce Lee, Ed Parker. Take us through that overview, please.
I would point out that this is, I believe, still may be the biggest selling book in martial arts books. I believe it well could be. It was for many years. It's still published today? I believe so. I believe so. Yeah, because people order copies of this.
I found it to be an interesting little book.
Well, it's a genius book, really. The fact that he wrote what he did, because he just took some very simple concepts.
Now, he was a Kenpo, Joe Hyams was a Kenpo black belt under Ed Parker. Am I correct in them?
I don't think that's correct.
But he was a Kenpo practitioner.
He was a teacher, but there is a film of him on YouTube with Nick Adams. It's Nick Adams, Joe Hyman, and Ed Parker in Nick Adams' garage, where he's got the rebel flag on the wall.
Yeah.
And Joe is wearing a white belt. And I think there may be a couple of brown tips on his white belt.
So who then you're going back to what, mid-60s, something like that? Or before?
Because this would have been the early 60s, because it's Nick Adams. Now, it's possible that after that, Joe was awarded a black belt. That's possible. But I know that, I think from what Joe told me, Ed Parker was angry with him for talking to Jenny Wu, I think it was, or something like that. And they had a bit of a falling out for a while. I'm not sure about it. But there was a falling.
So he learned Kenpo from Mr. Parker at the Santa Monica school, or did you think it was there?
I didn't saw there, but I think he felt private lesson. You think in Pasadena?
Can we get very far? Like, did you ever encounter him in Pasadena? No. No. Because I do know he trained with a Filipino martial arts instructor, and he gave him, I think, some part of one Wing Chun dummy that was belonging to Bruce Lee and his Kenpo Karate uniform, which had the Kenpo crest on it. And I met him one time and spoke with him briefly. Joe was an interesting individual.
Marvelous, was it? And a real dedicated student. I mean, even in his old age, he was still taking lessons.
This is a great story. I'll tell you. I've been up at a lot of things.
The first time I met Joe was Linda. When I was married to Linda, Linda came in and said, "There's a fellow coming over tonight." Who was the guy who was the MC for the People's Court? Doug Llewellyn? I think it was Doug Llewellyn, who was the he would interview the people after the People's Court outside, and they have I think it was Doug Llewellyn. Okay.
Yeah.
So Linda came to me and said, "Oh, by the way, Doug Llewellyn is coming over tonight with a fellow, Joe Hyams, who used to do the Bruce." I said, "What?" And he wants to pitch something. He wants to talk to me about something, and I'd appreciate it if you would sit in. I said, "Fine, I'll do that." They arrive. We go to the living room. It's Llewellyn, it's Linda, it's Joe, and myself. We're sitting there. It's the first time I met Joe. Doug Llewellyn makes this pitch, and Joe's there. He's going to do the writing. They want to do a TV show of some kind. Oh, and also the producer's there. The heavy set guys. He's there. And I'm in there, and I'm introduced to him, and something about the name. I said, "I know that name from somewhere." So about 20 minutes in, I said, "Excuse me for a minute." I got up and I went into the Bruce Lee room where all those file cabinets were.
Yeah.
I pulled out the filing cabinet and I said, "That's it right there." And I get to the name. I said, "Pull the file." I said, "I know I read that somewhere." Because Linda said, "You go through all these files," when we were helping her write the Bruce Lee story. "Anything you want." So I looked in everything in those files. I said, "There he is right there." So they had sued him. Hey, he was a pain in the butt for the Bruce Lee and the estate and Linda and everything. He was a real snake.
Joe Hyams.
No, the producer. Yeah, the producer. And get his name. So I walked back out and I'm sitting on the sofa there and I'm looking at Linda and she's looking at me like, "You don't look the same." Yeah. And I'm just sitting like, wrap this up. When they left, I told Linda, she said, "Oh my God." So she called Adrian Marshall, the lawyer. She says, "Yeah, that snake." I mean, it's still. So the next time I saw Joe, he said, "Whatever happened?" I told him. He said, "Well, no wonder." He said, "I didn't figure out what happened." But he called it the debacle of that evening. He was walking into an F. There's no way. That's the first night I met Joe Hyams.
And that was what, 1988? 88.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, now you're just to back up a little bit. You're in your Crenshaw school. You're teaching. You do that trip. You come back with, you're the only winner on that plane with the trophy, and from that championships, which would have been Ralph Castro's, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So, what's happening with you now? Because what point did you start? Are you still teaching? First of all, let's back up just a beat before that. Let's talk about the Kenpo curriculum in 59.
Yes.
Through 65, when it started to change. So when you started, and we see that black and white footage of you and Mr. Parker going through techniques and doing the two-man form, talk to us a little bit of what's going on there. I mean, I recognize the techniques, I recognize the form as most Kenpo people will, but people that are not Kenpo people won't.
Right.
So what was the curriculum at that time, and when did it start to change, and how did it evolve? And of course, that takes us to this big event.
Right. Well, Ed Parker and I were partners. I suggested it while we're working out Pasadena. He was teaching me after the class. We continue to work out.
Now, is this why he still is a student, or this is after Jimmy Wing moved?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just you and Ed Park?
Just me and Ed Parker.
Okay.
Yeah. And I suggested to him that we, form a partnership to make Bill, because I said, "You've written a great book, but it doesn't put at Kenpo, it has to be seen moving. So Phil is the only way to do it. So I said, let's make films. And I said, we'll do a 60-40 split and 60-40 to Ed. And I thought, anyhow, he said, well, let me think about it. Okay. So the next week, I asked him, I said, thought about my proposition. He's up. I'm about to film idea, but the reporting ain't gonna work. And I thought, I overstepped my bounds. What is he gonna come up with? And if I say, he says, Chuck, it's got to be 50-50 or I don't want to do it. And I said that, and I said, and most people negotiate themselves up. You just negotiate yourself down. Of course, I accept that. But he knew that it was going to be me doing most of the work because he just did that time. He was involved in everything else. But he says, you tell me what to do and how to do it or what you want. And he says, I'll be wherever you want me to be and we'll do it. We'll just do it. So, and I saw that the films came out and they were very, very successful for quite a long time until video.
So the black and white footage we see on YouTube was actually for sale at one point.
Yes. 2 50-foot reels, $5.95. $5.95.
And did it come with in a box with a cover, a sleeve, everything?
No. There was just, it was 8mm film. And they put in the projector. And then if you wanted, you could splice it together, make a bigger reel.
So how was it presented when it was received?
50-foot reels.
In again?
Yeah, in little boxes.
You still have one? You still have one? No. That would have been cool. That.
Yeah. And anyhow, we did that for a long time. And then that school, the logistics and everything, we had to close it. And we moved over further into Englewood, Hawthorne Boulevard, which is La Brea Boulevard where you get further up. And we had a school over there for 5 or 6 years. And eventually it came, when the 70s arrived, and they took a dive. And it was until Drew Spade entered the tracker, it really revitalized. And by that time, I was teaching for Enfor, and I was being paid. And then all of a sudden, George Way came up through one day, who was managing everything at that time. And he said, would you mind working without pay? And I said, thanks, Rudy tough. And I said, not at all. Just for a short time. Short time turned out to be forever. But I didn't care. I wasn't teaching for the money. I was teaching because I enjoyed teaching because I loved it. And then finally Vic opened up a Hawthorne book. Vic came to me. So
Well, let's just, before you go to Vic, let's just tell the audience who Vic is and his relationship to you and how that came about.
okay, Vic LeRoux was a student. He was 15 years old when he started. And he just kept getting elevated like everybody else.
So Vic started with you and went through the ranks with you.
Yes, on Crenshaw Boulevard. So then when we moved on to Hawthorne, he was with me. And he cross-trained also into BK with the BKR. So he's kind of like a dual role. Anyhow, all my black belts have 2 asterisks behind their name and on a family tree because they were taught by Ed Barter and me. So the first generation, they were actually taught by Ed Barter and me. So I just kind of picked out where I would you up. And after that, after the school was, like I say, I was teacher at Barter. And then Vic opened up and he said, I want you to be the instructor. And I said, fine. What types of class? The beginners. Oh, you teach beginners. I teach that's it. I said, Vic, the beginners are the most important. They be the instruction of the most senior person there. Not some blue belt, not some purple belt. Because that's what happens with schools. The first generation is always great, and then it starts dropping off because the instructor for the basics gets too good for the basics. So he has an undeniable he'll teach. Before you know it, it's a blind, leading to blind. And that's what happened with both schools. So anyway, I said, no. I said, I teach basics. I teach beginners.
Now, did you say that because you knew and believed that this is how it should be? Because at this point, we're in the mid-70s here, right? So you're like a seasoned vet, for lack of a better way of putting it, in this system. So did you say that because you're looking going, I'm going to be the best to teach these and I'm going to work on it so it doesn't deteriorate?
That's right. Exactly. Yes, I knew that. I mean, I'd seen it so many times.
So now at this point, what curriculum is being taught? Is it a 24 technique curriculum? 24 technique syllabus? Or when did that change? So when you shot the black and white footage, was it just a bunch of stuff written on paper? Or was it...
There's a bunch of stuff coming out of Headhunter's head.
So there was nothing, it was nothing like that, like this ball.
Oh, God, no.
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 So at this point in 75, when you're now the head instructor in Vic's school, what curriculum are you teaching, Chuck?